divided in 9 parts. The first part is bilabial. The articulators are the two lips. The lower lip is the active articulator and the upper lip is the passive articulator. English bilabial sounds include and The second place of articulator is labiodental. The lower lip is the active articulator and the upper teeth are the passive articulator. English labiodental sounds include and the third place of articulator is dental. Dental sounds involve the upper teeth as the passive articulator and the active may be either the tongue tip. English interdental sounds include and the fourth place is alveolar. Alveolar sounds involve the alveolar right as the passive articulator. The active may be the tongue blade. English alveolar sounds include and
Good afternoon, guys. In this moment, I will explain the place of articulation. And we found the post-alveolar. The post-alveolar is located behind the alveolar ridge. We found the passive articulation that is alveolar ridge and the active articulation that is the tongue tip. I explained that these post-alveolar sounds. The next post-alveolar sound is. The next place articulation that I will explain is the palatal. The palate. We found the active articulation that is the tongue body and the passive articulation is the hard palate. I will continue with the palatal sound and yeah. The next palate sound is wah, wah. The next place of articulation that we study in this moment is the velar. The velar. We found the passive articulation is the tongue body, and the negative, the articulation is the soft palate. Okay, the next is the velar sound. In the velar sound, we found the next is the last place or articulation that I will explain in this video is the glottal. The glottal is when you curl up the tongue, and we can find just this sound. For the glottal sound, we find
Now, I'm going to talk about the manners of articulation. Manners of articulation are related in how the air flows in the whole vocal tract. As my classmate explained before, In the vocal tract, we can identify the different organs or places that are involved in the producing of the sound. We can identify the different sounds, like for example, bilabial sounds, sight on the two lips. Labiodental sound is in the upper teeth and the lower lip. And interdental sounds, both teeth and the tongue. And also we can identify the other places that are involved in the producing of the sound. Next, in the next point, we can identify also the manners of articulation. There are other type of sounds or that are mixing the place that we can identify, but in this case, the manners of articulation are basically related in the air flowing in the whole vocal tract, and also the parts in the vocal tract can be narrow or broad, depending of the place that they are site and the manner that we are using to express one sound or one word. We are going to focus now in the different types of manners of articulation. The first manner of articulation is called stop sounds. The stop sounds receive their name because they are related in how the air which flows inside the vocal tract, the oral cavity, and then it receives a stop by the organs that are producing the sound. Like for example, if we produce a bilabial sound, they're stopped by the lips, and then it's almost impossible that the air can escape through the mouth. And we have some examples of the stop sounds. We have the sound of d, p in the word park. We have the sound t, t in the word tomato. We have the word k, k in the word cute. We have the sound of b, b in the word bass. We have the sound of d, d in the word dinner. We have the sound of g, g in the word gift. These sounds have a common characteristic. This characteristics is that they emit an explosive sound. That's the reason why they are called also plosive sounds, because that characteristic that they have in common. Now we have the fricative sounds. Fricative sounds receive their name because they emit a kind of friction in the organs that are involved. The airflow inside the vocal tract, but it's kind of stopped and released at the same time by the friction emitted by the organs. For example, if we have a labiodental sound, we can identify that kind of frictions surge by the air that trying to escape by the upper lip and lower teeth, upper teeth and lower teeth. Sorry, and we have this kind of fricative sound. And they are the sound of v, v in the word vowel. The sound of in the word fox. The sound of in the word thought. The sound of the in the word them. The sound of in the word surprise. The sound of z, in the word zoo. The sound of sh, in the word shoe, the sound of j, j, in the word juice. Then we have the fricative sounds. Thirdly, we have the nasal sounds. Nasal sounds are called because they involve the nose. The air which flows in the vocal tract tries to be released by the nose. The sounds that we have in the nasal sounds are kind of making a release in the nose and also trying to be contained by the soft palate when it's low. And we have the sounds that are nasal sounds. The sound of mm, mm, in the word monkey. The sound of mm, mm, in the word never. The sound of ng, ng, in the word ring. Continuing about the manners of articulation, we have the approximant sounds. Approximant sounds receive their name because there are sounds that are produced in a closure that it's produced in between two organs. Like for example, the bilabial sounds can produce approximant sounds. In the sound of what, we have how the organs are involved in that closure. The closure is not a complete closure. It's a kind of approximation that the lips have. In this case, in a bilabial sound, but some other organs can be tried to be close in order to produce an approximate sound. We have the sounds here, the sound of what, in the word wonderful, the sound o, in the word like, the sound in the word regular, the sound yeah, in the word yellow. It is important to notice that the o sound, it's also called a lateral sound. This kind of sound, it's a manner of articulation, lateral sound. In this manner of articulation, they are trying to be released between one of the sides of the tongue. In this case, the O sound is produced by the tongue trying to touch in the hard palate or the alveolar ridge. In this case, the air tries to get off the mouth between one of the sides of the tongue that it's not closed, and this is how this sound is produced. Finally, we have the affricate sounds. Affricate sounds are produced in a kind of mix that involves a stop sound and a fricative sound. We have, like for example, this sound, the sound of t, that it's connected by the sound of t, t, and the sound of sh, and then the sounds they get together to form a new sound. This is how the affricate sounds are formed. And we have the sound of t, t, like for example in the word chop. We have the sound of j, j, like for example in the word judge. And then there are the affricate sounds. in order to get a better understanding of the speech of how sound are produced, we have to classify the different sounds according to their voicing, their place, and their manner. We have now get a comprehension of what is the place and what is the manner of articulation. But what is the voicing? Voicing, it's a characteristic that is produced in the articulatory apparatus, but specifically in the vocal cords. If the vocal cords vibrate, they can emit a voice sound. If the vocal cords doesn't vibrate, the sound is a voiceless sound. And that is a characteristic for the sounds, the voicing. Now we have two symbols, the symbol of ng and the symbol of ch. And now we are going to classify how the symbols. We can notice that if we produce the sound of ng and we put our fingers in our Adam's apple, or where if we are men, of if you're a woman, where your Adam apple supposed to be, you can feel the vocal cords vibrate or doesn't vibrate. And now the sound of ng, ng. We can feel how a kind of vibration is produced in this area of our throat. And then we have a voice sound. Here is a voice sound for the sound of ng. Ng. According to the voicing. But what about according to the place? How this sound is produced? It is produced between the soft palate as a passive articulator, or the velum, and the body of the tongue. And then what kind of sound is? It is a velar sound. And then we have the classification according to the place. And what about the manner? The manner in this sound is produced, it's produced by the a kind of release of our nose. The air is released of our nose, and then we have a nasal sound. Pronounce again, ng. We can feel how the air is trying to get released out of the nose. Then a nasal sound. But what about the sound of ch? Ch? Can we put our hand again in our throat? And can we feel? Ch? Ch? It doesn't vibrate. And then this sound is a voiceless sound. And what about the place of this sound? Ch? Ch? Where is produced? It is produced between the tongue as an active articulator and the hard palate as a passive articulator. And then we have a post-alveolar sound, because it's the kind of mixing. If you remember how this sound is compound. Post-alveolar sound. And what about the manner of articulation? How the sound is produced? Well, if you remember, this is a kind of combination of two sounds, but we have one sound specifically. It's the sound of ch. It's compound between the sound of t, a stop sound, and the sound of ch, ch, a fricative sound. And then, right, we have an affricate sound. And now we can classify the sounds according to the voicing, place, and manner of articulation. Thanks for your attention.